The professor sat down at the breakfast table. He slipped his serviette from the ring and spread it carefully across his knees. Then he folded the morning paper in a neat oblong, placed it to the left of his plate, and read as he ate. A delicate precision characterized all his movements. His slim white fingers held the knife and fork as though they might be soiled in the contact, and his highly polished nails gleamed in the morning sun. There was indeed nothing about the man to suggest a scientist of European reputation. He had an air of feminine daintiness, though cruelty seemed to lie in his thin lips, in his white snapping teeth, and in his cautious eyes, often half closed. His smooth silky hair, his neat shoes and socks, like his well-manicured hands, showed him as vain of his appearance as a woman. And strangely enough, he had an irrational hatred for mice. Once, while a student, the professor spent a night of agony in his bathroom, tottering in the dawn to his room, pale and sweating. He had been about to enter the bath when a slight rustle drew his quick attention. Turning, he saw a mouse emerge from a hole in a corner of the room and make its way with a movement along the wall. The professor dropped cautiously to his knees, and at the sound the rodent paused. He held his breath, and the mouse ambled across the room to within a few inches of him. The professor sat with fearful eyes fixed upon the tiny aperture through which the mouse had disappeared, waiting for its return as it had scuttled back to its hole. What seemed hours passed before the soft rustle again broke the stillness. In the pale light not one but a dozen small gray shapes were discernible, creeping and scampering about the room. So he remained until the coming of the daylight and the vanishing of the mice. Every morning the professor read his paper well through before addressing any kind of a remark to his wife. She sat this morning, as she had done for years, at the opposite end of the table with her back to the light. Her position in the house, which together with the small income she had brought as a marriage dowry, was pathetically negative. Her husband was not actually cruel to her. That is, he did not lay hands on her. He just ignored her. She scarcely existed for him. She did not matter. Never very attractive in her best days, the years had done their worst with her, and the professor recognized with the detached criticism of a stranger that she was decidedly plain. This morning he had occasion to refold his paper, and so doing his glance fell on his wife, and as he did so, a strange quiver ran from his head to his very toes. He felt himself drawing his breath, while his eyes remained fixed on the figure opposite. A visitor coming into the room would have been merely a round-shouldered woman sitting at the table, crumbling a piece of bread and nibbling furtively. The professor, a man never given to delusions, saw the outline of something different, an enormous mouse. The hair scraped tightly back from the forehead left the pointed ears exposed. They stood out slightly from the head, and the sun shone through them, tinging them pink. The gray face with its long nose and quickly munching mouth, the weak chin lost in the shadows, the sloping shoulders and the nervous fingers curled over the bread completed the startling illusion. It was a monstrous mouse and not a woman. A passing cloud obscured the sun, and the impression lost its vividness. The professor felt sick, almost disappointed that he could not sit and gaze longer at his discovery. Odd that he had never seen it before. During the days that followed, he could not forget. He tried to lose himself in his work. He spent hours in his laboratory, but the memory would not go. He found himself watching his wife stealthily. He even took to creeping in on her unawares. She would be sewing or writing, and at his entrance it seemed to him she would crouch lower and turn her head quickly, while her bright pleading eyes might have belonged to a mouse itself. It was with feelings of mingled relief and disappointment that he received his wife's announcement that she was going to spend a fortnight with her sister. During her absence he slept better, and since he never encouraged her to write when away from home, there was nothing to remind him of his experience. As time went on, he was able to feel amused at the whole business, and was inclined to attribute his former condition, despite some doctor's verdict, to an attack of nerves. True, he had not suffered with nerves before, but that did not prove his immunity. On the day appointed for his wife's return, however, the same sweeping shiver that had passed over him on that memorable morning at breakfast visited him again. Her attitude then came vividly back to his mind. He tried to remember her under other circumstances before this loathsome impression was borne in upon him. When he first met her, when they were married, there had always been this resemblance. No matter how he recalled her picture, there it was, the huddled, furtive, nauseating caricature of a mouse. The sight of his wife when she came back was almost unbearable. More than ever was he repelled and yet mysteriously attracted. The ensuing days were torture to him, and at last he decided to take a long walk and solve the situation once and for all. He set out soon after lunch and took a road leading across quiet country. Late in the evening he set his face homewards, his brain sick with imaginings, and his mind still unresolved. He looked in at the drawing-room. His wife was not there. On the balcony, perhaps? No. Already having dinner, maybe? He must find her. The house was empty. A frenzy possessed him. She had never been out like this before, but he would find the wretched creature. He sped from room to room until he ran out of energy. His eyes, dry and burning, fell on a letter propped up against a clock. He seized it in his shaking fingers and read the following letter from his wife. I have gone for good. By the time you get this, I shall be many miles away. Nothing will induce me to return, and I do not flatter myself you will try to make me. I am aware it will sound mad, but for some weeks past I have been unable to rid myself of the idea that you are a cat in human guise. It first came over me one morning at breakfast when I looked up and saw you glaring at me. The shape of your head, the expression of your mouth were a cat's. Your hands were cat's paws. I tried to dismiss the notion, but could not. You crept about and seemed to be ceaselessly watching me. My life was untold torture. The fortnight away did no real good. I thought the hallucination would pass. It seemed to be worse, and I grew so mortally afraid that I am afraid to be near you. I have enough to live on. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.